So leadership 2.0 and 4.0 is, I would say, more of an evolving topic. I don't actually even know who else might use those terms. There's leadership 0.0 for different things. The reason why I use those terms is really out of the technology era. So if you go back and you look at the Silicon Valley and we look at the evolution of technology, there was web 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and 4.0. And if you study and you look at what were the evolutions of those periods, roughly we're going to take 2.0 was essentially the birth of the internet. And it was the birth of email and AOL and things like that. And what was significant about 2.0 is it was a back and forth communication. It was the first time that information didn't just come to us, which is really what we'd be more in the era of 1.0. So 2.0 was the introduction of this two-way street. The way that that applies to leadership is when we look at leadership really in the last, we're sitting right now in 2020. So if we look in the last 100 years, really, or specifically the last 50 years when we've been in this industrial revolution era, the type of leadership has been very 2.0. And 2.0 is top-down leadership, where a leader has worked their way up the ranks. They have developed a skill set and a competency. Sometimes they've just received their way up from working up the ladder, but ideally they have a skill set and a competency to be leading at that level. And then there's a team below them. Typically in 2.0 leadership, we see the leader giving directions and specifics to that team in order to follow those orders or follow those directions. A lot of times in that era, we kind of acted like the followers or the team didn't know. They were less competent and less skilled. So the leader was kind of this divine knowledge of greater expertise and understanding in order to give direction to that team, which was all good and well because it also was in, let's think about perhaps in the 40s, 50s, 60s, more passivity. People didn't necessarily feel as competent. They wanted somebody else to lead them. There was a higher respect for authority, a larger humbleness of general population feeling like they didn't know. They wanted to have a leader who took risk and forged forward, and then they were happy to follow. That rhythm was very common in 2.0. It's not something that we look back at and say, that's bad. We don't say that's bad. It's part of our evolution and part of where we've come from. And in that season, it was a really beautiful thing because it worked well. And there was a natural, what would we say, like a homeostasis between the leader and the followers because it provided both what they needed when they did their roles well. As we've evolved into 3.0, which I would say was more in the 90s, it began to turn where more this season of followership, when people who were followers were encouraged to develop leadership skills. But there's also this thing where not all followers want to be leaders. They don't want to be the sage on the stage, the dictator. But that's kind of in 3.0 where it got a little bit squishy, where we were saying, okay, followers need to learn how to be leaders. But then there was also followership that said no leader would be a leader without their followers. So you have to respect your followers just where they're at and not expect all followers to be a leader. And so that was in this changing time of 3.0. I like to describe it in 2.0, it's like a two-way street. We've got cars going both ways, leaders, followers, two-way street. What I like to say for 3.0 is that it changed to an intersection where you've got this way, but you've also got this way happening. And so it became more dynamic with multiple directions happening. The leader wasn't just top down. It's when we started shifting organizations from that top-down leadership to flattening the organization was in 3.0 because we didn't want that dictator leader. We wanted to bring it down and flatten it out because we saw followers as leaders in their followership roles. Now, 4.0 is really what has begun to become clear through millennials. A lot of times we look at millennials, and I believe millennials are frequently misunderstood. I like to say that millennials are simply a reflection of our culture today, and that you can find somebody who is 60 or 70 years old, and they will echo the same principles of a millennial, even though that 60 or 70-year-old can look down and be like, what is wrong with those millennials? But really, millennials are simply reflecting the culture that we have all evolved to. And so in 4.0 leadership, and what that is, let me just specify that real quick. So in with the millennials, it is the removal of the respect of leadership. And it is the elevation of understanding that I too am competent because of the internet, and because we're in this season where anyone can publish a book and anyone can start a blog and anyone can create a podcast. We're in that season where whatever you want to do, you really can do when you put your mind to it. The tools and the resources are available. And so this respect of like, wow, this person is so special has gone away, because you can be your own leader. You can create your own business. You can do what you want to do. And so it has removed the elevation of leadership. It also has removed kind of that respect and trust for that leader being the only one with the information. And so in this era, it says, I'm capable and competent to go and get information on my own. I have something important to say, and I'm going to say it and share it with the world. I want to be respected, and I want to add value and make a difference. And so what I do with my time and my energy is contributing to a higher cause, a higher purpose that really makes a difference. And so millennials embody some of these principles that really the whole world, especially here in the US, I can speak more to the US, but I would say with my international clients, for sure, the same values and principles are present. And so with this, we have moved into 4.0. And what 4.0 leadership is about is you still need leaders. We can't just be in this, floaty bubble that there's no leadership, there's no direction, there's no vision. That is still required. But as a 4.0 leadership, I like to use that analogy of we've moved out of cars on the ground going north and south and east and west, and we've come up into helicopters, or we've come up into airplanes. And what's different when you're flying or driving an airplane is if a cloud appears, we dynamically can move up or down around the weather system. We don't need to redirect everything. You can dynamically make adjustments. And if I was headed north and I need to dynamically make an adjustment a little bit to the west, I can do that. And so the dynamic nature of 4.0 to me is really what has shifted. And it's calling all leaders to shift into this 4.0 leadership, which means that things aren't as concrete and firm as they were when we were driving on the ground. It's not north and I'm confined by the road. It's like when we talk about writing in pencil versus Sharpie. Now, I'm a big Sharpie writer. I like to have that vision and direction and drive it. However, in today's world, we need to be much more flexible and organic and dynamic. And that's part of the 4.0 leadership. And also, as a 4.0 leader, while we have that flexibility, thinking in that airplane, we have that flexibility and that dynamic nature, we're able to adapt to new challenges that come our way. And something that's important in 4.0 is the speed of things has increased. Nobody can deny that. We all know that the world is going faster and faster and faster with innovations, with planning. We used to make a strategic plan for 1, 5, and 10 years. Now we make it for 1, 3, and 5 years. And 5 years is a light year away because so much will happen within that time period. And so in our short, or even with COVID, right? COVID, we really shifted from quarterly planning to monthly planning because there were so many factors that changed within the period of 1 month. We now need to be able to adapt, to assess, and adjust quicker than ever before. Now, if you're in a car, you're going to implode because the car just can't go that fast. If you're in an airplane can go 500 miles an hour without blowing up. A car cannot. And so the speed transitioning to the airplane allows us to be more flexible, more dynamic. It allows us to move faster without feeling the pressure of the speed. And so as leaders, what does that look like? What does that mean? With COVID and all of that has happened in 2020, I don't really see that. Yes, it has been a very challenging thing. Sometimes in personal growth, we ask the question, what is good? What is good about this? And when we look at COVID, we can say what is good about that. It has accelerated leaders in order to learn 4.0 leadership, because 4.0 leadership is the ability to adapt and to be flexible. So with COVID, the rule system that existed right here on the road, we had no one rules. You can be open, you can be closed, you can show up, you can't show up. There were lots of defined rules. Those got blown out of the water with COVID. But what was great about that is it really supports 4.0 leadership in order to be that dynamic, flexible, innovative, evolving and changing leader and organization. And leaders have to go home and think about it and figure it out and to say, how are we going to adapt? Or the overused pivot. How are we going to pivot and identify how we can change and survive? Now, it's not about survival either. 4.0, that's a very scarcity word. But really, a 4.0 leader is looking to prosper. They're looking to evolve and upgrade. They're constantly in that process of upgrading because it's not about survival. That's in the 2.0. So over here, we're not focused on speed. We're not focused on linear defined things. We're focused on what is our vision? Where are we headed? Why are we headed there? What difference is that going to make? And then being this leader who supports our people to know that they're making a difference and lifting them up so that they can go where they're going. Again, think about the airplane. Your followers are in the airplane. You are lifting them up to help them go where they need to go. And it's super exciting, but it's a different kind of leadership. And so what I love to do is help people understand how to be a 4.0 leader. It is something that we're figuring out. It's something that we're evolving into. There is no recipe around being a 4.0 leader. But as leaders become more self-aware, they get in that learning mode, that growth mode, they will be a 4.0 leader and they'll lead their organization to the next level. And that's exciting.